Hi everyone, this is me again, Jill Cabrera, and welcome back to my channel. Another video, another knowledge to learn. For this video, I am going to discuss about one of the topics under Module 19, Meaning and Types of Motivation. I will explain further and focus on one of the types of motivation, which is intrinsic motivation. Furthermore, I will also introduce and discuss about two of the types of motivation, namely creative and attitude. I guess you are all curious of the topic that I am going to discuss. So please continue watching this video because I assure you that you will learn something from my discussion. Before anything else, let's have first the objectives. So at the end of this lesson, learners will be able to, for knowledge, explain the meaning and importance of intrinsic motivation. For skills, identify the types of intrinsic motivation, and for effective, apply the ways on how to boost intrinsic motivation in the classroom setting. I have provided a quote from Samuel L. Johnson that will surely motivate students to learn even more. It says that curiosity is in great and generous minds, the first passion and the last. This quote is a great reminder that if we can get students curious and motivated to learn, we can set them up for a lifelong love of learning. And as a teacher, you have the power to help them find passion for learning while they are young. Let us move on to the definition of terms. We only have two terms. These are intrinsic and motivation. So what could be these two terms? Okay, so intrinsic motivation is belonging to a thing by its very nature. Next is motivation. Motivation is the reason or reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way. Let us now discuss about intrinsic motivation. What is intrinsic motivation? Intrinsic motivation is a term that refers to a person's behavior when it is driven by personal satisfaction, doing something purely because it's fun or enjoyable. It's the difference, for example, between reading a book for amusement and reading a book in order to study for a test you feel obliged to do well on. In education, intrinsic motivation is influenced by a sense of connection with the material. The feeling that a student is competent enough to complete the task at hand, and that they have independent control over their learning. In class, when subject matter is revised to promote intrinsic motivation, learnings are found to protracted and satisfying. Though it can be difficult to create conditions where intrinsic motivation can flourish. Generally, work quantity is often controlled by extrinsic factors, while work quality is controlled by intrinsic factors. Let's take a look and try to analyze this example. Anna, a grade 3 student, starts learning vocabulary because she loves reading books. With this, Anna is learning vocabulary not because she was forced to, but because of her love in reading. This is what intrinsic motivation is trying to imply. There is no need to force the learner to learn something they don't like. They must be given freedom to choose their thing that suits to their skills and interests. Another example is Teacher Risa conducted an activity in her class. She provides choices for her students on what might be the flow of the said activity. This is to enable students set goals and investigate their interests and curiosities. With this, students are not only enjoying the activity but learning as well. It is because they were able to choose the aspect that suits to their personality and interests. Before we explore how to motivate students to learn, let's go over the differences between intrinsic and the other type of motivation, which is extrinsic. Intrinsic motivation occurs when students are engaged because of internal rewards, like a love of learning or interest in a subject. These students learn to value learning for its own merits, regardless of any external factors. An example of intrinsic motivation is a student learning new vocabulary words because they love to read. Extrinsic motivation, however, is learning because of external factors. Students may be motivated to learn to pass a test, to gain a reward, or to avoid punishment. An example of extrinsic motivation is a student who is studying so their parents will not ground them for poor grades. Generally, children lose engagement after being externally rewarded. This suggests that extrinsic motivation is short-term and can lead students away from an inherent love of learning. As a teacher, you can prevent this by prioritizing intrinsically motivated learning in the classroom. Next, we have the types of intrinsic motivation. There are actually 4 types of intrinsic motivation, but we will focus on the 2 types. These are creativity and attitude. One of the types of intrinsic motivation is creativity. Many of us have felt the need for a creative outlet at different points in our life. As a motivation, find a new form of creative expression can be even more fulfilling than mere curiosity or the desire to cross an item off the list. Your learners may not need to become very good at whatever they're learning to find fulfillment. Plenty of people become artists without ever desiring to show their work, for example. But the desire to cultivate a form of creative expression pushes them on nonetheless. Another type of intrinsic motivation is attitude. Finally, some people are motivated by their desire to change the way they perceive the world. They want to learn more about others, grow in self-understanding, or help others change their perspectives. Or maybe it just makes them feel good. For instance, if you're leading a course on interracial relations, self-help, or cognitive behavioral therapy, this would all be examples of courses strongly influenced by attitude motivations. How to motivate students? Encourage intrinsic motivation. The value of choosing intrinsic motivation over its extrinsic counterpart is clear, but it's not always easy to know where to start. When it comes to the classroom, there are a few strategies that you can use to make sure your students are interested in your class material and ready to learn. Elementary-aged children are highly motivated when their teachers prioritize content mastery and understanding over high test scores. Although tests can be a great way to measure student progress, try to focus on helping them understand the concepts they find difficult. As they spend more time learning, they will be better able to turn their weaknesses into strengths and gain an appreciation for learning that's deeper than test scores. Students are more likely to be motivated if class material is relevant to their lives and involves their interests. The best way to make your curriculum relevant to students is to get to know them. Spend time understanding their needs and what makes them light up in a classroom setting. And allow some flexibility in your assignments so students can spend some time focusing on what they personally find interesting. Research also suggests that online learning can encourage intrinsic motivation. In part, this is because online learning often involves some level of independence, and independent learning is also linked to motivated students. Consider either making some of your curriculum or including some independent learning activities, like reading or personal project time. And finally, gamification can have an engaging place in the classroom if intrinsic motivation is prioritized. In a nutshell, gamification is the use of activities and rewards to teach different learning concepts. When an activity or reward is focused around intrinsic motivation, like giving a child a calculator as a prize for winning a math contest, student engagement improves. Now let us move on to the last but not the least part of this discussion. 7 ways to boost intrinsic motivation in the classroom. Finding ways to motivate students, especially those who are currently unmotivated, can feel tough. But by knowing the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, you can make sure you're taking the right steps to engage your students. Here's a quick list of 7 motivational activities and strategies you can use to improve your students' intrinsic motivation to learn. First, get to know your students and their unique interests. When possible, structure your assignments in a way that can include their interests. If you have a student who loves dinosaurs, for example, write a math problem that involves counting cartoon dinosaurs. Second, choose rewards that encourage intrinsic motivation. If you're holding a reading contest, for example, you could make the prize a book of the child's choice. Third, when students have some autonomy over their assignments, they're more likely to be motivated. Consider trying blended learning, a strategy that involves a mix of independent learning and whole class lessons. Fourth, include some curriculum that is relevant to your students' lives and current needs to boost motivation. Fifth, give your students positive feedback on their assignments to encourage them and to reinforce that they can do well. Sixth, motivation is often enhanced through curiosity. Ask your students what they are curious about and help them find something that interests them about an assignment. Seventh and last one is share your love of a subject or concept with your students. If you show why you love learning, your students are more likely to catch your enthusiasms too. Building motivation in your students will boost their enthusiasm for taking your course. The reasons for how students take courses vary, and they may alter over time. A learner may begin a course due to an external inducement, yet continue because they love the feelings of increased competency. Another learner may start a course because they wish to broaden their horizons, and then finish it because of the social benefits they acquire. The more motivations you can give your learners to continue taking your course, the more they will stick with you in the long run. The more you learn about your learners and their motivations, the better you will be able to speak to their needs and inspire them to persevere. That's all for this video, everyone. I hope you learned something from our discussion. I bet you learned a lot of things about intrinsic motivation, and I'm very much happy that I was able to share my knowledge to you. Thank you so much for watching and listening to my discussion. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell for more updates in my upcoming educational videos. Goodbye everyone!